home to 3USA.
Well, tonight we're talking about favourite radio identities through the years, and I thought we couldn't pick anyone better or more appropriate than Ken Sparks in Sydney. Hi to you, Ken.
Morning and good evening, because, well, up here in Sydney, you can't tell one part of the day from the other, but good evening to you, Phil, and also I understand you've got John Blackman with you, riding shotgun.
Oh, look, Ken, please, don't stop talking. I just love listening to your voice. Keep saying some more. Go on. You haven't lost it.
Hearing that jingle, that was the first one that Lewis Bennett came up, that esteemed manager we had at 3UZ. He was the guy who came up with Nice to Come Home To, and then we went into the greater 3UZ.
Yeah. Hey, but there's a wonderful story, and you'd know this, that Lewis Bennett commissioned the Anita Kerr singers to record the 3UZ jingles. And it was obviously done long distance because people didn't travel much in those days, and it's before we had computers and so on. And apparently, as you would know, Ken, the station paid a fortune for the jingles, and they all came back to Australia with Nice to Come Home To 3UZ. and the whole package had to be, as you would know, Ken, the whole package had to be re-recorded.
Oh, dear.
They did another package, too, where they had Ken Spouche.
Oh, no!
Really?
Oh.
How did they get that wrong, Ken?
And then they got this one, John Verdigrease.
Well, I mean, they really were the golden days at UZ, weren't they? Tell us about some of your fellow announcers who were working at the same time.
Well, I was always fascinated with, like, Don Juan was just a fantastic announcer.
Mm-hmm.
And such one of the best fast board operators, and John would understand this, and you would understand too, being a radio guy, is that they really knew how to do it. He really knew how to do it technically, but the most fascinating people really were people like Bill Ackfield and Jackie Clancy.
Yeah.
Yeah, they were. Jackie Clancy had to be one of the mystery guys, and I recall after he passed away, no one was allowed to know that he'd passed away for 12 months after he'd been buried.
Is that right?
It was just one of those guys, and he used to say to me, Ken, why don't you go down and see Mr. Bennett? Mr. Bennett loves you, you know, and you're his boy, you know. Go down and just walk into his office and tell him to get stuff. He'll take that off you, but he won't take it off me. He's an evil character.
They were actually a great combination, weren't they, Ken? Bill and Aki and Jackie. In fact, I think at one stage of the game they did an off-colour joke which involved the Ball family. I think we all know the joke by now. But the Ball family. But the thing is, what was the delay they started working in then, just to make sure that nothing like that went to air again? I think it was something like 30 minutes, wasn't it, or an hour, or what?
Oh, yeah, they had this enormous delay.
Yeah.
And I think it was a lot, the other radio stations were terribly jealous of their success because they were so good. They were number one, 9 to 12. And then, of course, we had Mr. Bennett got Aki back. That was, and also Jackie Clancy. And Bill Ackfield would sort of move around, do a little bit of news. And then Jackie Clancy he was director of fun. And he would write, lines. And John would know people like the Electric Weenie out of Honolulu.
Yes.
To write Jackie one-liners.
Mm-hmm.
And then, of course, he would write the one-liners for people like Don Lunn and Alan Lappin to add a little bit more fun into their show. And then that's what he did. But eventually, they did leave us. They went to 3XY. And unfortunately, they sort of slipped off the radar, which was just a tragedy. And Bill Ackfield met a very, very untimely death and a very sad...
the car accident, yeah.
Shocking car accident on the way back to Mount Macedon, where he was living, and he was a car nut. He had a little Mini Cooper, and he really loved motor cars. And of course, a big guy getting into this little car, but the car had been hotted up and very powerful, and we used to have big chats, and we were like resident petrol heads talking about motor cars.
I was about to say, you're a bit of a rev head yourself, weren't you, back in your day? Did you ever actually race competitively, Ken?
Yes, I did. I started out on motorcycles. I was a sidecar passenger on motorcycles on the dirt track.
Yeah.
No brains, no pain. Then I moved into hot rods and stock cars, and I won the New South Wales Championship at that time. Then I moved into sports cars, and I eventually managed a great racing driver called Frank Malich, who, thank the Lord, he's still alive, and also raced in the United States. And I did some testing with Formula One in England many, many years ago when I was doing the Formula One series for Wide World of Sports.
Ever been in the celebrity race for the Grand Prix down here in Melbourne?
I was banned.
Why?
I was so upset. Well, they said I had too much experience.
Oh, is that true?
I don't blame you either.
Put your people off the circuit.
Now, like John Lewis, do you also have a stable of wonderful cars today?
Well, I've actually been a little bit wiser. I had ended up with about 11 motor cars. I had my own racing team, and then gradually I've given it away to the children because I said, why would you fight over these pieces of metal when I am buried and dead? Why not I give them to you right now? So I gave away this Ferrari, and I gave away this Alfa Romeo, and this Mercedes, and this went on and on and on. But I'm sounding as if I'm big noting myself, but it was just one of those dopey things I did. I collect motor cars, and I did collect motor cars, and now I drive a Subaru RS Turbo, which really is a racing car. And my Chinese friends say to me, "Why for you drive young boy's car?"
Now, Ken, you were the voice of Channel 9 promos for many, many years. I mean, when did you start that, and when did it all finish? In fact, I think I'm still hearing your voice somewhere, aren't I?
Well, sometimes it slips through. They're not supposed to. They're supposed to pay me, but big Channel 9 on occasions, they can't keep up with everything. But the interesting thing about that is that Bruce Mansfield was doing the voices at Channel 9.
Yeah.
And then Bruce decided he didn't want to do it, or something happened at the 9 network. And they then approached me, and I thought, gee, that's extra money. I'll be able to use some of that money towards my racing cars. And so that was how I started doing the promo voices, and that was, I think it was well over 3 decades I did that. I was the voice of 60 Minutes for 14 years.
I was so jealous, Ken. I wanted your job, and you I mean, you just wouldn't go away.
Well, remember how we shared that booth in Studio 9, because all of us, you, Philip and John and myself, we would have shared that booth and done how many ridiculous things in that silly little piece of real estate. What fun we had. What wasn't, those 9 days were just sensational.
Well, guys, I'm older than you are, and my booth days go back to 1958, when you'd have a slide up on the screen. Stay tuned to Channel 9 for Kit Carson Frontier Scout. But the best one of all, and these were live to air, as you know, and I shared the story with John last week, but I'll tell it again. In my best, fruitiest voice, I'm 18 years of age, trying to make a good impression. I'm still saying stay tuned for Bat Masterson with Gene Barry. I told the world to stay tuned for Matt Bastards.
Now, John, while you're there, do you remember the favourite, we'll get away from radio just for a second, to get to the Channel 9 canteen, the old one in Bendigo Street, Richmond, where we affectionately called it the Chew It and Spew It.
That's right. Well, yes, and there's some other names for it too. It was actually called the Dolly Inn, I think, wasn't it, Ken?
Yes.
What about Graham Kennedy? One time they asked him, or they banned him from it, because he'd said something about whether it was Tremaine Palace or something like that.
Well, you blame Mike McCall Jones, the comedy writer, for that. Tremaine Corner, they call it. And poor Lee McQualter, the chef, didn't have a sense of humour.
No, that's right, and I believe the pygmies used to go in there and dip their poison darts in the stew. But it was all done with great affection, wasn't it, Ken?
Yeah, but the thing is, we had to, that was the one place we could all meet, and at least while we were waiting in line to get a pie, or something like that, something healthy at that particular time, because you wouldn't trust the rest of the food. You say, oh, well, we can go for a 4 and 20.
So, being the voice of Channel 9 for 3 decades, why did you pull the pin, Ken?
Well, basically, they eventually, I was manoeuvred. They got the new fella in, and he tried for 3 years, and eventually, they said he wanted to make changes, and so I said, fine, well, I've had a great time here at Channel 9, and, I've enjoyed the time, but things had really changed. We had lost some of that magic at Channel 9. We lost great guys, Jim McKay, who was just a fantastic program director. Then we had David Leckie, who was such a strong, CEO.
Absolutely, yeah.
Bruce Gingell,
Yep.
and Sam Chisholm, and we had we did have the best team in television, and eventually it was dismantled, and then people went across to Channel 7, and a lot of them were the Channel 9 guys who eventually outrated and outmaneuvered Channel 9.
Oh, yeah, the Channel 7 revolution. I presume for your voiceovers, because some of them were done almost instantaneously, I presume, Ken, you had a landline to your home, did you?
Yes, well, what I did is I set up my own studio at home, and this is the way I could do a current affair, for instance. I did current affair for decades, really. And, 9 never paid for that, by the way.
That's very advanced, Ken, by the way. When was that happening?
Well, that was happening before a lot of other people had got on to using the computer and using email to send it.
Now, Ken, we've got a grab of a commercial that you did, which is probably iconic when it comes to Australian radio and television commercials. Have a listen to this.
Australia, what's your favorite sport?
Football.
Snack?
Pies.
Animal?
Kangaroos.
And what's your favorite car, Australia?
Holden.
Let me see, that's football, meat pies, kangaroos, and Holden cars, huh?
Right.
Well, you sure sound like Australia to me.
We are.
Well, then you better tell me again, because I just might forget.
We love football, meat pies, kangaroos, and Holden.
So that doesn't sound like you, Ken.
We did that in at South Melbourne.
Yeah.
No, North Melbourne, I'm sorry, in the Wobble and Gobble studios, the W&G studios, and it was George Patterson advertising, and eventually they released it as a record, and then also we did another version, which was very political, and it's a bit of a tongue-in-cheek. It was never ever played on the radio, I don't think, but
I bet it's on YouTube, Ken, by now. Actually,
it's on YouTube, and it's also on my website, because I finally was able to release it, but it was the band version.
Yeah.
It talked about the political side of what was happening in Australia at that particular time. But it was again tongue-in-cheek, and but that commercial actually originated in America for Chevrolet.
Oh, yes.
Yeah, and then they adapted it, and it's sort of become, as you said, iconic and part of what happened in radio and television over all these years.
Talking to Ken Sparks, isn't it? Ken, in a moment, I want to talk about the fact that you've reinvented yourself with this hugely successful Saturday Night Jukebox on Foxtel. But before we do that, and we'll take a break first, I just want to go back to the 3UZ days for one moment. I didn't know Lewis Bennett well, but he always came across to me as a sort of very pompous individual with those bow ties. But obviously he had a flair for radio and was very innovative, right?
Well, I'll tell you how we could align. Lewis Bennett was a different character to Kerry Packer, for instance. Kerry Packer loved television. Lewis Bennett loved television. He outmaneuvered everybody. And the thing that probably people thought he was pompous was because Lewis had a lot of class. He really was a classy man in himself, but at the same time he was exceptionally cunning. And I sounded like Bruce Mansfield there for a second. Exceptionally cunning.
And was John McMahon your program manager at that time?
Yes, he was, and again, what a great talent and a fabulous singer. He was one of the first singers on the Graham Kennedy Show or on IMT.
Yes, in fact, he made records with Jim Davidson back in the 1930s.
And just a beautiful tenor voice and a tough nut. You know, a tough Catholic guy who he really knew what to do, but at the same time, he and Lewis Bennett, if they could see that you had the talent, they didn't stand in your way, and they would help you. And then Lewis actually asked me eventually to become a station consultant, and I flew overseas and spent a lot of time in America. And I would do the jingles and that in America, so as we didn't get John Verdi Grease and Ken Spouche, and we didn't get "You're born that used to drive me.
I'll tell you something, Ken. I don't know whether you've actually thought about it, but you're probably, getting a bit too old for this sort of business. But doing voiceovers in America, I believe. Who's that guy on Holiday Island who I acted opposite? I can't remember his name now. But he makes a heap of money in the States.
Nick Tate.
Nick Tate, yes, that's right. Nick Tate.
Mm-hmm.
You ever thought of following in his footsteps?
Yeah.
I do work in Canada.
Yeah.
And I do some work in America, but I do a lot of work in the UK for Jack FM.
Oh.
We don't the music you want.
Oh, great.
Don't play requests. Jack FM in Oxfordshire.
Okay.
It's the hot station over there.
Ken, you couldn't do a little one for Remember When, could you?
You're listening to Remember When on number 1 in Melbourne, 3AW.
Thanks, mate. We'll use that.
I hope you pause long enough to get
Exactly
there.
right.
Hey, I must tell you before we take a break, a lovely Don Lund story. And towards the end of his life, he used to come in on the Sunday night on Remember When, Ken, and help us out on the phones even. He was so keen to be part of the business. He died all too young, Don Lund. But let me tell you, if you don't know, back in 1971, Don had the travel agency down in Beaumaris. And because I was between shows, he made me his PR guy. And but Don used to love flying over to Caesar's Palace to see Frank Sinatra.
That would have been a regular job, wouldn't it, Phil, between shows?
It was very between shows. I was unemployed briefly. But anyway, so Don picked up the pieces and I was working at his travel agency. But on one occasion, he got back to Australia a day late and Lewis Bennett almost fired him. He'd been over there to see Frank Sinatra and neglected to take into account the fact that he lost a day flying back over the dateline. And when he left America on a Monday, he didn't get back to Australia till Wednesday. But being a travel agent, you'd think he would have known better, don't you?
Yeah, well, he really, on occasions, he could be a bit of a loose cannon because I had to, when I became a station consultant, unfortunately I had to put on that executive cap, and Lewis would say to me, go and have a talk to Lonnie, will you please? Mm-hmm. He's not in the bright, and I'd have to pull him back in the line because he may have done something like given a free plug to somebody that didn't have that was buying time on the stage.
That's called, it was payola then, now it's called cash for comment.
It never happened these days, Ken.
It's not much. Now, let's take a break and come back and talk about Jukebox Saturday night. Ken, you all right about that?
Certainly, I'm here for you.
It's 21 to 10. Our special guest is Ken Sparks in Sydney. Ken, are you doing any radio these days?
Well, the only radio that I'm doing is Formula One reports, which I do for an international group, and that goes out each and every Sunday morning. And I still follow that. But as far as doing a regular radio show, no, just commercials or voiceovers and that type of thing. A bit like John. We sort of become a little bit of, what would we call ourselves, John, of radio gypsies?
Yeah, sort of, the grey nomads of the radio industry, if you like. Hey, listen, Ken, you were talking about the electric weenie before.
Yes.
These were, Phil, these were a series of one-liners you used to get on 3 foolscap pages, didn't you? And they printed both sides, and you could only use about 15% of them because the rest was sort of really Americanized. But you will find just about every one of those in my 2 joke books, all right? More Aussie gags, but I've actually put them into a book just in case you're interested, a red book and a green book. Have you ever seen them?
I have them. They're great books.
Yeah, they're great, but they're all electric weenie gags, Phil. They're fantastic.
Ken, have you written any books yourself?
Well, there was another guy called Dick Orkin and Dick Orban. There were 2 of them. And then I started to write my own. Don't know whether they were good, but as good as what these guys would write. But I found that by watching these overseas writers, it would inspire me to go and think of something and try and adapt them to the Australian way of life.
Yeah.
To the Australian audience. A little bit harder, but certainly your work, John, on Hey It's Saturday, how many times did you use that? And was it ever revealed why you continually said Nurse!
that was a Derek and Clive grab that Murray. Nurse. Now Phil wants to ask you about your latest venture.
Oh, well,
Yes.
you know, I must tell you, it was earlier this year that my lovely friend Jill said, you must come around on a Saturday evening and watch Ken Sparks hosting Jukebox Saturday night. It's mainly old black and white clips from the 50s and 60s, even into the 70s.
Is Ken in black and white as well?
No,
for continuity?
Ken is in living colour. But, you know, I got hooked, and every Saturday night at 7:30, I have to be at Jill's. We sit there with Chico rolls, and we watch Jukebox, and it's taken off like a rocket, hasn't it, Ken?
We've been very fortunate, and we did a 5-hour marathon last week, gathered more audience, and we're sort of outrating people. I don't want to boast, but I'm told by the channel we're outrating MTV and V Channel, and we're getting a large audience, and thankfully, not only do they play it Saturday night, they give us 2 shots on Sunday, one at 1:30 in the afternoon, the other at 10 p.m., and then on Thursday night, they came back and they replay it again. So we actually have 4 hours of national television through Foxtel with Aurora on channel 183, and it's not a profit. You know, people say, "Oh, you're in television, got your own television show, and you'll be buying a new Ferrari." No, probably I could buy the dinky toy Ferrari, because the expenditure that I put into it, and the time and the effort that Peter Kakura, the producer, and myself put into it, it is not a money-making exercise. It's something we want to do, and if I can stick it up people like MTV and the Rooftoppers, I'll do it every day, baby.
Yeah, not only that, but Rage and all the other competitive
Actually,
shows.
Ken, you'll be happy to know I've just recently signed a contract with Foxtel. For $69.95, I get 30 channels every month. Now, caller Ken, a caller wants to know if you had a relative with the same surname working in Sydney radio in the 30s and 40s.
No, there's nobody. The only other person is Ronnie Sparks, but
that's right.
Ronnie came from Queensland. He was SPARKS, and I'm ES. Then he came to Sydney and he changed his name to SPARKX. Ron's still on the radio. He's working on 2WS. He was part of the successful 2SM team, but no relatives. We come from I come from a military family, and I think the closest thing to show business was that when Dad left the army, he would play the violin with bands around the RSL clubs in Sydney, and that was about it.
So, and your parents had a military wedding as well, didn't they, Ken? Or put it this way, there were shotguns there. There's another electric weenie gag for you, folks.
Another one coming in.
Hey, listen.
You like this one, John Lewis? He listened to the phone one time and said something about a promo I did, and we did this thing, throwing the cat amongst the pigeons for John Lewis and and I said, I really like that. And Lewis, he said, oh, you know Ken? He said, yeah, I know Ken. And Lewis, he's had so many marriages. He had about 11 marriages, hasn't he? His favourite song is Here Comes the Bride, and his favourite dessert is wedding cake.
Oh, how brilliant. By the way,
when he wrote that one.
Ken Sparks, I'm very impressed with all the merchandising that's going on Jukebox Saturday night. You can write in Jono, and you can buy pens, key rings, you can buy eskies, T-shirts, caps, mugs. You're doing very well, Ken.
And we're coming up with a DVD. It's the trouble is clearing all these tracks.
Oh, yes.
And we'll be releasing our first DVD very soon by popular request. So that'll be the first of a series. And then I've got another one coming up with all the material I did on Wide World of Sports. I actually owned a lot of it myself, all the Peter Brock interviews, and we'll be doing the Lost Peter Brock tapes.
Wow.
A 6 DVD series.
Oh, how good is that?
That's what I've always loved about you, Ken Sparks. You're always so entrepreneurial, and I reckon you're going to die behind a desk somewhere selling a cap.
It'll be about it. And they'll say, what are you doing? Oh, at the moment, I just like to say, would you like to buy the Sparks wheelie train? We've got a turbo car.
No, but that cap you wear on the show every week, that's sort of your trademark. It's a bit like Columbo's crumpled raincoat, and you should start marketing those Ken Spark caps.
The other good thing is if you got a bad hair day, Philip, you don't have to worry about getting the hairdresser.
Yeah, just ask Molly Meldrum, that's right.
Oh, yeah. Well, Ken, you know, more power to you, mate. The show has been so successful for you, and as you say, gets 4 runs a week, and the first one is 7:30 Saturday night on the Aurora channel on Foxtel, and I am looking forward to you coming down to Melbourne so we can chew the fat. And if you're free to be here the 3rd Saturday in November, I'm taking you out to lunch to the Survivors Club.
Thank you. Thank you very much. And we can sit around and character assassinate people who are not there.
Oh, we can sit around and tell lies for a couple of hours.
In fact, you can character assassinate most of them who are there, because most of them are deaf anyway, aren't they? Just a joke, by the way, boys.
And you know, Ken, when we go to that lunch, there'll be about 80 people there, and sadly, we'll be about the only 2 who are in full-time work.
But thank you for your support, and also it's great to have shared so much time with you, Philip, over the years, and also John Blackman and myself. How many times have we passed each other in the corridors at 9? And
oh, yes, that's right. Not once did you ever say hello to me, but anyway, that's another point, kid.
and you know, Bruce will be very sorry he misses, because he always lights up when he has a chat to you, I know that.
No, isn't that good? Thanks, mate.
And would you say hello to my best girl, Jill, because she's a big fan.
Hi, Jill. How are you? This is Ken Sparks from Jukebox Saturday Night on the #1 station in Melbourne, 3AW, going, I love you, baby.
Oh, she will melt. Did you ever watch that DVD I sent you when Jill and I went to the North Pole?
Oh, I thought that was fantastic. And the other thing is, thank you again for the double CD of one of the great singers, Gene McDaniels.
Oh, I'm still waiting for a Gene McDaniel clip on your show.
We can't find one.
Oh, that's sad.
And we have a problem.
Ken, just do what everybody else does. Rip it off YouTube.
Oh, yes, but unfortunately somebody be knocking on the door. NBC wants $3,500 every time we play one of their clips.
Oh, no.
We just don't have that budget.
No, that's an outrage. Take care, buddy, and we'll look forward to catching up soon.
All right, Brackers, all the best to you, mate, and to you, Philip. Keep going strong, and remember, you're never too old to rock and roll.
Good on you, Ken.
Oh, remember when? That was the greater Ken Sparks.